Hey friend, quick note before we dive in. If you've been laid off and are feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone. I've been there myself and have had to navigate this challenge. And that's why we built two things. One, our free school community filled with laid off professionals and partners supporting each other through the ups and downs of being laid off. And two, our layoff recovery course, a structured path to help you rebuild faster and move forward with clarity. Both links will be in the show notes for you to explore. With that, let's get right to the episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Laid Off Legends podcast, where we come together to listen to layoff stories and relevant expertise with a focus on finding inspiration, guidance, and encouragement for the community. I'm your host, Leo, and we begin today with a unique perspective from a unique individual in an incredible company that we've all heard of. What does recruiting look like in a $1.5 trillion company? And what does a layoff experience there actually feel like? How do you bounce back and begin to create even more impact from that journey? We'll get answers to those questions and many more today with our special guest, Maya. Welcome to the Laid Off Legends podcast.
Thanks for having me, Leo. Appreciate it.
It was so great to connect with you, and we connected through a mutual friend. And of course, I'm looking at your profile on LinkedIn, and I love how generous you are in just sharing roles and what's available, not just on your team, but also on other teams and the new team that you're in right now. I've watched that and been super inspired by just how generous you are. So thank you so much for contributing to the community.
Of course, recruiting is a very rewarding space to be in.
Let's start there. Why don't you walk us through your journey? You ended up in recruiting in one of the largest companies in the world.
I actually started off from college working a retail job, but I was at Best Buy, moved my way up from regular cashier, customer service person into more a supervisory type of role. But I figured retail wasn't for me. I knew I was meant for something more. And so from there, I used my network when it came down to my sorority sisters from San Francisco State, Cal State East Bay, and UC Davis. And it just so happened that one of my UC Davis sorority sisters informed me that there's this tech company that she works for, and they were looking for an executive admin for the VP of HR. The company was called Sybase at that time, and SAP ended up buying them out. I ended up being the executive admin of the VP of HR, and that's where I got exposed to recruiting. I would be in meetings, and they would talk about specific requisitions that they're hiring for, right, and the process of how that goes. So it was very intriguing, but I didn't know if that was the space that I was going to be going into until I realized that I cannot be confined in a room. And being an executive admin, you're always just, in a room. Then from there, interacting with the rest of the executive admin and working a lot more with the C level of folks. So I think the motivation started to go away, and my manager ended up seeing that and recommended, I don't think this is for you. And I could tell, but your personality, it goes with recruiting. And that's when she was, I would want to offer you an internship here, but you have to get your master's. But I actually ended up telling her the deadline's done, so I can't do it. And she was, well, the one way I started was through agency. And she started at agency and then moved her way up into the VP of HR for a very popular tech company. And so that was a lot of motivation. And the good thing too is she was also Filipino. So that was very motivating for me. If she started from the ground up and moved her way up like this, I'm very capable of doing the exact same thing. So reached out to my network again, and it just so happened one of them does work at a tech agency company called Modus. And from there, I applied and got into recruiting. So I think just even getting into the tech industry was very interesting because I started off as an EA and then from there into a recruiting space. And I think that's something I want to highlight is listen carefully with how people perceive you in a sense, because sometimes it does help you when it comes down to some of your strengths that maybe you don't realize. To me, I just thought I talked a lot, but to them, they could see that yes, I did talk a lot, but there was substance of how I was interacting with people. I was having this conversation with the VP of HR. She was just like, yeah, with your personality and just the way you conversate with people and they just gravitate to you, recruiting is going to be a good space.
That is so powerful what you're mentioning. And shout out to all the managers out there who pay attention because it's one thing like, okay, you're doing great, but you could really do awesome here. And we talk
Mhm.
about painters and plumbers on the podcast, where if you're on the wrong team, no matter how awesome you are, it's you just don't fit. What do you think the role of managers and leaders is in terms of finding talent and making sure people are in the right places?
I think it's huge. I believe that all every individual contributor really wants is to be seen. And I think it takes a really good leader to see those strengths and being able to vocalize it and see how can I even get this person to the next level. Some managers do that, some managers don't. But I think when you know as an individual contributor that there is a manager paying attention of what you could offer and what kind of impact that you have, there's a different type of fuel that you get and the way that you show up to the job that makes you great really stand out than the rest. But it does require sometimes a little acknowledgement from leadership to do that. But I did end up having a specific manager that really saw me and really pushed me to the next level, and not just in the sense of my strengths but also my weaknesses, and that manager was willing to have those crucial conversations with me.
Fast forward to your recruiting role at Meta, what were your roles and responsibilities? And given how large this company is, given how many people they recruit worldwide, walk us through what your day looked like. And
There's two type of titles that you'll see, either a technical sourcer or a technical recruiter. And then there's also just a sourcer or a regular recruiter. The tech is because we're hiring software engineers, infrastructure engineers, just depending on the realm within tech. But of course, there's people that are just more on the business side. Where I'm getting with this is I am a technical sourcer. So, what I do as a technical sourcer is I am the individual talking to hiring managers, trying to understand what they're looking for beyond just the job description. This is where I tell candidates put yourself in a hiring manager's shoes when you actually write your resume, because there's specific keywords that we look for that you might not think we would look for based off the job description. So I always tell candidates be as detailed as possible with, like, what you did with your job, because that could be the one thing that would make me get on the phone with you. Once I get what the hiring manager is looking for, then I do my search. I look through LinkedIn, Indeed, different websites that I could actually find candidates. And of course, we look at applicants as well that apply directly on the career site, but a lot of them tend to apply on LinkedIn. And then from there, we'll see the application. So always recommend people to update their profile on there, especially if you're in the job search, especially after being laid off.
this is great
And
information. I think that there's so many roles out there, but then also so many more applicants. And we're hearing so much about oversupply. You apply, you don't hear back from recruiters. You start a chat with a recruiter, you don't hear back.
yeah.
Separates candidates. When you look at all these applicants, what do you see that make you go, that one versus this one?
Well, one, they're very thorough with their experience on their resume as well as their LinkedIn. Put yourself in a hiring manager's shoes and say, hey, if I'm hiring for this role, what key things would I want to see on a resume? Let's say it's a sales. If we are going to aim for a sales job for you, sales has to do with numbers, how much revenue you could make and all that. The way I'm looking at your resume right now, you are not talking about that. So how does an employer know that you have the experience of increasing revenue or how much commission you're getting? So even as simple as providing what was the project or what was the impact that you made to help increase revenue if you are in a sales job. And this is where I've had candidates where they say, "Oh, I have a general resume, but I also have very dedicated resume depending on the job that I'm looking for." Because the general is very general, right? And then the other one is specifically reflecting everything they've done for that role specifically after reading the job description of maybe the companies that they applied for. So being intentional, look at the job description and look at the specific keywords. For example, let's do a tech job that I'm doing right now. It has to do with rack and stacking servers. I won't be able to know that unless you specifically type it out on your resume that you rack and stack servers. But What else goes with that? Did it require you to also do some troubleshooting, some maintenance? You have to be a little bit more intentional when it comes down to how detailed you want it to be so you could really showcase what you've done within the role. And I think that's where people do a disservice for themselves is because they really just try to cater it to the resume, but not really put what they did within that role and what was their role within their team. Because at the end of the day, right, all our jobs is interconnected and you have to partner with someone. There's going to be some I's there, but there's also going to be some we's there. But what was your part within that we also needs to be highlighted.
You're dropping some gems because I think there's a struggle here because part of it is,
Yes.
yes, understanding what the hiring manager is looking for, using the right industry terms where the hiring manager and the
Mhm.
recruiter will understand. But you also
Yes.
have a limit of 1, 2 pages. So you really have to be very clear and very aligned with what the
Yes.
role is asking for. One more
Yeah.
question on the hiring and this experience.
Mhm.
How are hiring managers managing the deluge? There's a ton of talent out there, so many
Mhm.
people applying to jobs. And of course, you are probably recruiters and sources are overloaded. Hiring managers are overloaded. How are they sifting through all this stuff?
That's why recruiting isn't in place because our hiring managers have people that they are managing, also their scope and responsibility that they're trying to do within the day. And this is where we really partner with them as a recruiting team to really find the best people. But I do have a lot of hiring managers, especially when I worked at Meta, where they were very eager to help hire, too eager sometimes when we're just like, slow down a little bit, hold on. You are looking for a unicorn, and I know we've discussed like where you would be flexible or not. And sometimes it will come to a point where I could be 50-50 with a candidate that I ended up finding on LinkedIn, or even maybe a resume that applied online. I would just send it to the hire manager like, "Hey, I'm 50-50 with this. What are your thoughts?" A lot of them would say like, "Yeah, just hop on the phone with them, Maya, and then just ask for this." Or it would be, "Hey, I reached out to this candidate and it looks like this is the candidate that you're looking for. I think it'll be better if you reach out to them and from there also have a possible coffee chat to assess if they are the right individuals."
We always ask about company culture. What was the culture like at Meta before all these layoffs started to happen?
I loved it. I would say I got to Meta, I believe I was less than 5 years in recruiting because I was there for 8.5, right? Until the layoffs of February of this year. It was the best thing that could have happened to me when it came down to my career and also being at a dream company that I never thought I would work, but was using Facebook a lot before Instagram even became Instagram. So to work for a company that you really utilize their platform was very fulfilling for me. But the culture itself, I always say this to candidates and they might believe me, they might not, but I always tell them it is one of the best cultures I've been in because you are surrounded by very smart people. And the crazy part about it is they don't gatekeep. They really want to partner with you. That's the other thing. Like, yes, we have big things to solve for, but at the end of the day, like these people you interact with on a day-to-day basis, so they end up kind of becoming like your family. And that's what actually made layoffs really hard is because these people end up do becoming, some of your really good friends and your family. You spend sometimes more time with these people than you do with your own family. So why not build those relationships? In the past, we were using Facebook to ping each other at work. And so to me, I would connect with some of the directors, the VPs on Facebook, and I'm seeing exactly what they do outside of work. And so to me, when I see them during the meeting, I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw that your daughter had a birthday. Happy birthday to your daughter. And that's how sometimes we start off our meetings. And then from there, we go into business while we're waiting for people that we just do small talk. So that
That
was the culture that I remember at Meta. Very high achievers there, but at the same time, we also know to take a step back, right?
that must be really difficult to leave such a bond and to experience experience that you weren't the only one that went through it, but others went through it, and you're watching others go through it. Take us there. Walk us through that experience.
My experience is unique in a sense of when the announcements of the layoff was happening for November 22. A couple of months before that, I actually decided to get a divorce. So my timing was actually, I felt like it might have not been the right time, but I needed to do what I needed to do personally. But when this news came about, there were times I asked myself, did I make the right decision? Because what if I get laid off? I'm not going to have insurance, right? How am I really going to move forward without a job? So there's a lot of that went on prior to the layoffs happening. And of course, you're talking to your coworkers and seeing exactly where they stand. And so everybody's scared. And when we found out exactly when the date was, by then I started already reflecting on what I did at Meta and how fortunate I was with some of the experiences that I had that is way different than some of the people in the team that I was a part of. So when it came down to how fulfilled I was with the job, I thought that I did everything that I can already at the company that I thought I was going to be in for a very, very long time. It was even to the point where I was like, am I going to be okay if I get laid off because of what I've already accomplished? And the answer was yes. I wasn't looking more into, okay, what's going to be my next step if I do get laid off? I think I took the time to really reflect of everything, the years that I've put into the company to really assess, am I going to be at peace once I get laid off? And the answer was yes. I would have given my spot to somebody else if that was even possible. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. I was able to survive the first layoff in November. It was a bloodbath, to be honest, especially being in recruiting. Recruiting really got hit bad. And and to be honest, it was traumatizing. I remember popping up like at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. I just popped up and then I looked at my phone, and that's when I had some texts from some friends in my team saying that they got laid off. And from there, logged on, and all you see is my group chat with my team. It's like, I'm gone, I'm gone, I'm gone, I'm gone. And so you're seeing it in real time. And crazy was, like I mentioned, it was a bloodbath. And you're finding out from not only the recruiting side, like who else in the business, like your hiring managers, are they still there? And so here you are like scrambling. So mentally it was like very exhausting.
Now, were you in the office at this time? Were you working
No, we were
remote?
advised to stay at home. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is great because from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, by then you were done, like mentally, because you're just, okay, have I reached out to the people that I see got laid off? Okay, do I have their number? Dang it, I don't have their number. Hold up, let me reach out. And it's even to the point where I was following people on Facebook and Instagram, and people were reaching out and that way to see, like, are you safe? Are you good? And so that was a lot to take in, to be honest.
And you described some of the life, you had lifing,
Yeah,
but then you
lifing.
work going through all these things. But you mentioned something unique that I've not heard any of our guests mention before, which was you felt at peace with it to a point where you are going to give up your slot to somebody else. Where did that come from?
I think I had to be real with myself. I think that's what it was because by then, right, because my life was lifing, I realized that there's a purpose when things like this happen, and it does take a lot of self-awareness and a lot of acceptance and acknowledgement to know, okay, if I get let go, have I really accomplished everything that I have, especially professionally? And to me, I had to remember the type of impact that I already made. And was that sufficient enough to say, okay, yeah, I made it, but I know somebody else could make the same impact, but probably different if they get that chance. So I think that's what it was more of, like, I want somebody to experience what I experience at the company that I wanted to be at. And sometimes it does require me to give that opportunity to somebody else. I think that's just how I approached it. At the end of the day, I was grateful. I think that's what it was. Even though there were so many things that were not good happening professionally as well and personally, I knew I was blessed and I was very grateful for the experiences I already encountered being in the role that I was at because I was the one that got to travel more than everybody in my team. I got to do some project management that some people didn't get to experience. So to me, that was something money couldn't buy. And that's why I was very at peace with it because to me, these network is what's going to get me to where I need to go later on in my career.
It's such an abundance mindset. It's such a generous mindset. It's saying, hey, I'm being let go, but I've had these incredible experiences. There are others that can have this as well. So that's such an incredible example to others and a different way of processing really a pain moment.
Yeah, and prior to this, where I had a lot of survival guilt. I was grateful to still have a job, but the survival guilt was there because I made peace with being okay to be let go. And then, of course, it happened again, March of 2023, when we had the second wave of layoffs happen again.
One of the things that I have heard as the host of the podcast is how different people process this information.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not necessarily what they learned on the job, it's what they learned outside that really gave them the skills to do this. Do you mind for a minute just share this perspective you have? Again, unique, where you're like, okay, that's fine. I had this great experience, but I'm going to give it up for other people. Where did that come from? And how do you process something that you just described as a dream job and a dream culture, giving it up with such grace?
I think what it is probably because I've been fortunate enough where a lot of my roles is I was referred to because of my connections and just how I built these relationships with people. I'm grateful that without those individuals introducing me to the job and then me landing it, I probably would have not been in the place that. So it's like giving back in a sense. And to me, like, I don't know how to describe it, to be honest. I just feel like it's just me to always think about like other people too, to experience what I experience, especially if like they have a different opinion of like maybe a company or whatever, because they haven't really seen it or actually really experienced, they haven't had enough time to be there. To me, I think that's why I'm more okay, like I've had the years. Okay, it's somebody else's turn.
It's such a graceful approach and it's such abundance mindset. Thank you so much for sharing. And so you described this as a bloodbath. You wake up the next day, your world has changed, your schedule's changed. What was that experience like?
It it was very exhausting, to be honest. It's because you're trying to scramble business as usual. And I think this is where a lot of people have realized that at the end of the day, you're just a number in a company. And now the question is, how do you approach knowing that you are just a number? I think because of what transpired with the layoffs, I realized how important my health was because I sacrificed my health the very first couple of years to be successful within the role that I had because, I had something to prove. When the whole time, really, like, I've always been worthy to be there. I think that's what a lot of people forget. And that's probably the reason why I was so at peace is because at the end of the day, I started to realize like, yeah, I was worthy to be there the whole time, that I didn't really have much to prove, but just show the work and the impact that I have. And going after the whole bloodbath is recognizing like, yeah, I'm going to work hard, but at the same time, I got to make sure I also take care of myself. And so instead of jumping in, it's really taking a step back and saying, all right, how do we really move intentionally? Now that I know I'm just a number here, and how do we make sure everybody is okay because everybody's going through the exact same thing with the survival skill and having to still just like, act like nothing happened when really there was something that traumatized a lot of people. I know people that went to therapy, and that's including me, to just discuss how traumatic that experience was and then having to go through it twice. Yeah. So I went from the first layoff, I think there was like almost 15 of us sourcers. and then we ended up being four. And March happened, so there was four of us, and it just so happened even my best friend was one of those four. After the March layoff, then it was just me and having to figure out and manage all that. It just so happened our data center org was fortunate enough to still be hiring compared to other teams at that time. It was a lot to take in, and you really just had to more think of really having that line of, okay, I also got to take care of myself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically to be able to show up correctly now that this is now the new environment where you're doing 10 times the work, having to really show up every single day. And then from there, maneuver the different things that are happening that sometimes you don't even know like that it's happening. Navigating that was pretty hard because the people that were your contacts are no longer your contacts because they got affected. You could tell everybody was leaning on each other. Everybody was very empathetic in a sense. They know we got a job to do, but at the same time, not everybody's taking it the way that somebody else would take it.
For folks that are going through the raw emotions of being laid off, and you've seen this happen, what encouragement or advice would you give them?
I would say to reach out to your community. Where a lot of people go wrong is they feel like they have to process it on their own because I think you do need to do some self reflection of what your impact was there. And I think that's where people kind of forget. They more look at the negative than the positive. Like, I know there's people that are maybe have gone jaded because they got laid off, right? Maybe this is like, God, the universe saying your chapter is done here because you're meant for something more. And I think being able to accept that is something that everybody needs to do because you serve your purpose there. But now you got to reflect back of what that purpose was and what you've accomplished. And I think that's where we mess up sometimes is that we're so good at updating our resumes of what we've done in the job, but we actually forget how we showed up as an individual within the job and our accomplishments within it. So I would say self reflect, like you did everything that you could have done within that job. Unfortunately, it wasn't in your, control that you got to stay there. Um, I would say self-reflection, and then from there, the self-acceptance.
Can we talk a little bit about survivor's guilt? Because this is something you mentioned earlier. For folks who are going through survival guilt, what type of insights or advice can you give them?
Oh, man, this was like hard to navigate, to be honest. But I also leaned on folks that were experiencing survival guilt. And I think this is where community really helps. A platform that you're creating right now, right? Because at the end of the day, we just want to know that you're not going through it alone. There were a lot of people that got laid off. I think what also people forgot is the people that did get to stay, that survival guilt does hold a lot of weight because I was at peace to be able to let go. I'm just like, man, what happened for it to be me to stay? And talking to some people and also something that I said to myself, I think I'm not done here yet. I think I am needed here still. So that's the reason I'm probably safe. And I even told one of my really good friends because she's helping a different part of the business because she was scared because she wants to have a kid, starting to prep for that. And of course, having this job is going to make it easier for her. And I told her, I don't think we're done here. I think we're going to survive it. So there's just a lot of positive talk. We both stayed both times. She's still there. But I got laid off in February. But she's the other person that I talked to about survival guilt because we knew there were people in our team that this was the end all be all for them. Like this was either gonna make it or break it for them career wise, and they didn't get that opportunity. And so that's where the survival skill really got to me, is because I felt like I was taking that experience away from those individuals when I already had them.
I do like the perspective of you're not done yet. there's still work to be done. And this may get sort of spiritual, but sometimes we look at our work as I'm just filling headcount. But no, recruiters are talking to they're giving hope to people, fulfilling dreams, connecting people to their talents. And it's such a special thing because many times once the role is filled, you just kind of move on. But no, a recruiter's role is so special in a way because you do represent the company. To a certain extent, you are a keeper of the culture. There's a little bit of that too. Was there a moment you realized in your layoff experience that it wasn't just an ending, that this was the beginning of something else?
Yeah, there was a lot actually happening personally and professionally for me since 2017, and this is something I will probably discuss more on my my own podcast. There were so many things happening in my life: the divorce, and then 2 weeks prior to the layoff in February, my mom passed away, which technically I have a lot of childhood trauma with that as well. And then being laid off 2 weeks later, I knew there were certain chapters that needed to be closed, and they were all closing at the exact same time for me to get to the next chapter of my life. At the end of the day, we all label ourselves with our accomplishments. Probably how I would introduce myself, like Leggy, I'm 41, I'm a divorcee, ex Meta employee. But that's doesn't what defines me, because there's more to Maya than that. And so to me, when that layoff happened, I took it as a sense there were so many chapters ending in your life, and this job is the last one for you to go into the next level that I'm supposed to go into. And honestly, when you're doing the job for so long and it becomes repetitive too much, that you feel like it's just the same thing over and over again, where sometimes your creativity goes away because now there's specific swimming lanes. As a company grows, they'll hire specific people to do specific things now that maybe you used to be able to do. And one of them was for me to do some project management, which takes up my creativity side. And I felt like with that job, it was starting to be taken away. And so I kind of lost a little bit of the passion when it came down to recruiting, but why I was doing it. So that ending made me reflect back, as well as what made me fall in love with recruiting, and how do I take that now to, this new company that I'm at, and also maybe some passion projects that I'm working on. I helped out a friend do his resume from real estate to possibly sales. Like, I had to thank him and say like, "Hey, thank you for letting me do that. I forgot why I got into recruiting and you reminded me of it again. And so thank you for like adding fuel to that spark for me. You made me realize why I am in recruiting and why I end up falling in love with it in the first place." Because this actually is pretty personal for me, the way I got into recruiting and how it became full circle for me, when it came down to my family.
Were there skills or strengths that you discovered about yourself during this experience that you might not have recognized prior?
I had an inclination, it was it, but I didn't want to accept it. Just a natural connector and networker. My coworkers have always said it to me that I'm the culture carrier. It's just natural for me to conversate with people because there's just that curiosity just to get to know you as a person. And then if I could give some insight or something like that, then I do it. Most of the time, my biggest strength is I'm a big connector.
I love the focus on who you are as a person and how you bring that natural skill set to your role and how that kind of evolved from an EA to a recruiter and even still sharing that abundance and generosity in what you're doing now. I love how the common theme is who you really are. It's a genuine thing. You didn't put on a mask to go to work to come back. And so that's something that's really powerful. And it really does resound and it shows as you share your story.
Thank you.
So, of course, you've gone through this entire journey. What are you learning and what are you doing on your piece of the planet right now?
I was fortunate enough to find a job right away after the layoffs. But the crazy part is I wasn't even trying. I was still, trying to process the death of my mom as well as the layoff itself. But I think it was more of the thing with my mom that was more processing. This is where I say my strength of being able to connect with people and have a really good network, and why I was so peaceful as well, because technically some of the people that I connected at Meta, they would vouch for me anywhere. I ended up getting the contract job I wasn't being picky. That's the other thing. This is where a lot of people could mess up a little bit when it comes down to their job search is the way I'm approaching my job now is yes, it's a contract position, but a lot of my roles started off as contract, like 3-month contract to conversion if you do well. And I think this is where people need to be a little bit more open minded, where, yes, I understand FTE is a really good thing to have because you get the benefits. But sometimes we have to, kind of swallow our pride a little bit. And if it's a contract role, it's a contract role. But the approach and the mindset should be a little bit different with that. And how I look at it is okay, this is a contract job. Yes, I would like to get, either extended because it starts off like as a 6-month, right, contract. They might just end it after 6 months. But I told myself that I'll just make as much impact as I can and really show up how I would show up, even though I'm just a contractor, and see exactly if the company sees my value. Because at the end of the day, you're also technically interviewing the company too. And I think this is where the self reflection actually helps because that's when you realize what your worth is because you could be at a job. Yeah, it's a full time job, and you realize, like, oh God, this is not for me. But at least with some contract jobs, you could say, okay, I think this is along my lane. Let's see how it goes. But also, it's also my chance to see if this is even the company I want to be with full time. But at the same time, if they don't see my value, then it's okay. Another company is going to see my value and what I have to offer.
That's unique insight, especially now when there's a challenge to get the full-time role. There's so many people hiring, so many people applying. And so the opportunity when it can, not be picky, go for a contract role, experience it, interview the company, perform, prove yourself. I think that's a really useful strategy. Maya, we're coming to the close of this interview. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've loved your authenticity and just sharing. So thank you for being so open. Rapid fire question. Best career advice you've received?
Not to be in the weeds too much, to actually look at things with a 10-foot view.
Your go-to piece of advice for someone on day one of their layoff?
It's not to rush into trying to find something. It's actually being able to take that step back and really reflect before you actually go full force to trying to find something. Because that's where you find your power. It's by doing that and really knowing your worth and how you're going to give that to the next company that you're going to.
One tool or resource you wish you'd known about sooner?
I mean, I've been doing therapy since 2021, but a part of me wanted to do it sooner because we had that benefit, and it really did help me with the layoffs. Being able to see my therapist either once a week or biweekly to really help do the processing of it while still managing all the other personal things that I was going through.
The most valuable skill you've developed through this entire experience?
Effective communication and comprehension. You can communicate all you want, but if the comprehension is not there, there's no point of like you trying to be the dead horse with whatever you're trying to communicate. I think that's the one thing is kind of lacking right now. People are more responding to respond rather than actually taking in the information.
As we wrap here, are there any final comments you'd like to leave with the community?
I would say that it's gonna be okay. It's a rough patch, but I feel like if you have the resilience to go through this, then you're gonna be set for life and you're always gonna know you're gonna be okay anytime that you go through any type of struggle like this. And this is where also community, like this platform, really helps to really open up sometimes the doors to your next evolution within your career. Take your time and also reach out to the people you feel like could help you get to where you need to be. And this is where too I've, told friends if you need help with your resume, reach out to me, right? I'm here for a reason. If I can't help you find a job, at least let me help you with maybe to get you to at least talk to somebody. Also being able to like, give back instead of just receive, because I feel like that's just how the world, the universe works. Not only should you be receiving, you should also be able to give back because at the end of the day, that gives you more purpose, is being of service of someone rather than just like take, take, take. And that's how it'll flow naturally.
You mentioned people reaching out to you. Where can people find you? And you also mentioned a special project that you're working on. Do you mind sharing just a little bit before we wrap?
Yeah, of course, everybody could find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, you could reach out to me if you need any help when it comes down to taking a look at your resume, see if there's anything maybe you're missing, as well as maybe you just need help when it comes down to your interview process. So, more than happy to help in that sense. I have a little project going on that is really very important for me is the podcast that I'm starting called My, Yours, or Layers. And it's going to be depicting pretty much my life from starting from 2017 and on to where I am now. And kind of showcase the self growth, the self reflection, the self development that happened to get me to the space that I'm at now, where I'm totally at peace, thriving, and very like just happy with all the decisions that I made for myself.
So beautifully put. I will definitely be looking forward to that. Maya, thank you so much for sharing so generously today, not just your life experience, but also your work at Meta, being so kind and offering your availability to review resumes and things like that. And then we'll plug you into the community as well. Folks, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. If you enjoyed this, please like and rate it to help us get more exposure. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I answer those personally. And if you're reaching out to Maya, you can reach her on LinkedIn or on the YouTube channel. We'll have links to this on the screen right now to our stories playlist. And if you'd like to meet other professionals and discover resources as you navigate your layoff, a career journey, consider joining our private school community. It's free and the links are below. Thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.